Eric Bischoff was on Ariel Helwani's show to promote his MLW appearance as well as his NXT appearance. And they ended up talking about AEW because they're talking about wrestling. And Bischoff starts tearing into AEW.
Okay. What about your take on the current state of All Elite Wrestling? What do you think? How are they doing right now?
All right. So people are mad at Ariel Helwani for even asking this question. How dare he? If I remember correctly, Mariah May, the women's world champion of AEW, is questioning why this question is even being asked. And to be quite honest, I think Ariel Helwani just is not going to look over any opportunity to kick Tony Khan in the ribs because of how Tony Khan has, talked about him. And I don't like the idea of everybody coming together to kick Tony Khan while he's down. I don't like that. It's one thing when it's just kind of me and Millennial Smark and a couple of other people who are like, everybody else is yelling at us about how great AEW is, and people are just telling the truth. They say, you're nitpicking, you're doing this, you're doing that. It's like, okay, there's a lot of this stuff we've been talking about for a long time. Wrestling Soup, and we've been talking about this stuff for a long time. If you listen to the people who operate in this portion of wrestling YouTube, we've been saying a lot of this stuff for a long time. But there are some people who are actually quite new to this criticizing AEW game. And it seems like everybody's just surrounded AEW and is kicking dirt on them at the same time. I don't like that particularly. But it ain't like what's being said is not true. And a lot of this, again, is the rubber band breaking from when Tony Khan was up. When he was up, he talked a lot of shit. He was trash talking Ariel Helwani. He trash talked Eric Bischoff. He trash talked a lot of people. And Meltzer continues to do it. Continues to talk about how they making so much money, they'll be profitable next year, yada yada yada. I think they got somebody. I don't remember who, but they got this person running around talking about how many more Dynamites will it take to surpass the length of Nitro. So you got these people who are absolutely asking for the smoke, and they're getting it and they don't like it. So I don't have a problem with Ariel Helwani asking the question, but I do note for the AEW fans out there are a lot of people out there who are now kicking dirt on AEW. People who are openly fans of AEW 2 or 3 years ago who have decided that they're going to attack AEW now. But this is AEW's fault, if we're being honest.
Elite Wrestling, what do you think? How are they doing right now?
Oh, they're horrible. Come on. It's just, I've given up. I used to get really frustrated with them because I actually hate seeing people screw up good opportunities. I know what that feels like, and I know how hard good opportunities are to come by. So when you see somebody just shooting themselves in the foot day after day, week after week, in every possible way, it's frustrating for me, and I would vent that frustration. Now it's just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, it is what it is. There's no hope for them. Nothing's going to turn that company around. There's no light bulb going to go off in anybody's head and all of a sudden realize, oh, this is how we actually get people to watch TV. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're too stubborn to learn.
All right, so I'll say this. When he says there's no hope for them, I disagree. There's always hope. There's hope. There's nothing else. Because hope does not have to be tethered to much of anything. Hope, without hope, you have nothing. Right? So, if you're an AEW sicko, you have to have faith in Tony Khan. Which means you have to have hope that the company's just having a down period and it'll turn around. If you look at the media rights deal that they just got, that's hope, because now you know that AEW will at least be around for 3 more years unless Warner Brothers Discovery decides to break that contract and kick them off early, which there's no signs that they will. So there's plenty of hope there, even though hope doesn't have to be tethered to anything. It can be tethered to the fact that they got a huge media rights deal. And it can be tethered to the fact that the company will continue to exist. So it has the opportunity to turn around in the future. As bad as it is right now, it doesn't have to be that bad in 2 years. But it's pretty fucking bad right now. I'm not even going to lie to you. It's terrible. It's absolutely awful. And the show's almost unwatchable. 2/3 of their shows are unwatchable. If you're watching Rampage and Collision, you must have brain damage. I don't understand why you're watching that stuff. I don't get it. It's not even that it's bad. It's just that it's nothing. It's like reading a book with no words on the page. You're not being told anything. There's no information being given to you that will enrich your wrestling experience or your life. But again, there's people out there who watch Velocity, WWE Velocity, and they watch the B shows and they love that stuff. So those are the people who watch Rampage and Collision. Good luck. That's for you guys. For those of us who, we don't got that kind of time, we would like for you to convey to us stories that are worthy of our attention. Because if you're not going to do that, we just do something else. All right. But I don't want to say that there's no hope for them. I think that that's a little too harsh. There's certainly hope. There's certainly some things that they should be excited about in the future. Being on Max, the stability of the future, but they're making it worse on themselves. No problem saying that. Let's finish. Let Eric Bischoff finish his thought.
Chance for a story to turn, like the way NWO turned WCW around. There's no chance of any of that.
Not there.
Why not?
Because there's nobody there that knows how to tell the story. There's nobody there that knows what a story actually is. It's like, I use this analogy sometimes because it's easy to understand. Boy meets girl, boy gets girl. Boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. That's a story. It's not very compelling. Nobody cares. But if Shakespeare gets a hold of it, it's kind of like a version of Romeo and Juliet. So, yeah, you'll hear the fan base say, "Oh, there's great story. There's stories." Dave Meltzer says there's the problem with AEW is there's so many stories people can't keep up with them. I kid you not, he said that. And people take him seriously and send him money every month. What the hell?
I will say this. When you're telling, a story, and stories are my thing. I'm a big story guy. I love stories. And the Moxley angle had no inciting incident. I mean, what I mean by it had no inciting incident, I mean, it happened for no reason. And it happened out of nowhere. It's not like Moxley saw something or spoke to somebody or there was a thing that occurred that pissed him off that led him to do all the stuff that he's been doing. And without that, it becomes very difficult for people to get involved with the angle. Even if we see who the heroes are going to be in the story, which we have seen that, even if we have an idea of where the story is going, meaning that the idea, of course, is for Moxley to create himself as the dragon that must be slayed in order to push AEW to the next level. All right. What made him think that had to be the case? Why did it have to be him? There's no inciting incident. There's no reason for him to decide that has to occur. Again, it's not like he saw something or something occurred or somebody said something that he can fall back on and say, this company is going to drown if this attitude continues. That's not what we're getting out of this thing. And it's taken too long for the story to actually develop, for the characters to develop, for, you can have car crashes and blood and people screaming at each other, but there needs to be more than I'm fighting for AEW, because nobody cares about the soul of AEW or the future of AEW. None of that actually matters. I know that the fans think that it matters, but it doesn't really. Like, I know that the old Vince Russo thing, we're fighting for control of the company and all. No, nobody actually cares about who controls the company. I hate to break it to you. We do like about individuals. We do like individual stories. Show us that these individuals are perturbed by what Moxley is doing. And why they're perturbed by what Moxley is doing. Show us people that Moxley have been friends with or has had some kind of relationship with over time who are asking and probing to try to figure out what's going on. Somebody as simple as Eddie Kingston. He can't wrestle, but just bring him out there, let him stand on the ramp and say, Mox, what the hell's going on? Why are you doing all this stuff? So Moxley can explain it. He'll have somebody to talk to. And then he could try to recruit Eddie Kingston and saying, when you come back, you broke your leg for this company, you broke your leg for this business, you know what's going on. I'll explain it to you because when you come back, you're going to be on my side. And then he can explain it to Eddie Kingston and thus explain it to fucking us what's going on here and why it's happening and why it needs to happen. But that's really that's a huge missing point of a lot of the AEW stories. They really dropped the ball on the inciting incident, the issue that kicks off the story. What is going to kick off the story, and then what is going to happen to keep the story going? There needs to be logs thrown on the fire. You could douse it in lighter fluid and it'll burn out. Just throw a log on there and let it heat up. What are the logs they're throwing on this fire? Nothing really. Okay? That's why it's not working. That's why it's not working. He gave you, and by he I mean Eric Bischoff, a basic story structure. There's always boy meets girl, boy chases girl, boy gets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. They live happily ever after. That exists in hundreds of thousands of ways. 7 basic plots. But to make it entertaining, you have to look at the inciting incident. What brought the boy and the girl together? Was it a chance encounter in a library? Did she literally fall from the sky? Did he meet her in church or some other kind of situation? Did he have a long time crush on her and, took his time talking to her or whatever the case may be? And that's really what's supposed to get people involved in the story. If AEW is dropping the ball on that very basic aspect, then yeah, you really can't give them any credit for their storytelling. And they haven't done that. Moxley has created a stable where him and a bunch of killers are going to go around beating everybody up, trying to motivate them. And it's not terrible, the idea that he's going to beat up Chuck Taylor to motivate Orange Cassidy. All right. Why? Why do you want Orange Cassidy specifically to step up? Why do you want Darby Allin specifically to step up? Why do you want these people to specifically to step up? Like, if you're going to pick your opponents and then target them and say, you're going to be the guy I'm going to give the chance to slay the dragon. Why? Why is that guy important? That's what we need to have answer. And then it actually has to be somebody that the fans care about. And then you have to position that person as somebody the fans care about. And then you have to actually let them get over. Smothering them every week is not going to help them. And it might need to evolve the character, and that's what happened with Orange Cassidy. The character didn't evolve. He tried to stay true to himself, ended up losing, which is, terrible storytelling actually, because the hero is supposed to change. He's supposed to learn something. The hero is supposed to learn that what he's been doing is not working. He got to try something else. But it doesn't look like he's going to get a second chance. So it's weird.
The stories, if there are any, are so bad that only the lowest form of wrestling intellect on the planet finds enjoyment in it. Now, you will find some people, and I think this is cool. If you just like the physical presentation of guys flying all over the place and doing all kinds of athletically amazing stuff, and you don't care about story, you don't care about characters, that's your jam. AEW is your jam. And if that's what you like, more power to you, man. I'm glad you found it. It's just not viable for the masses. It's, as Tony calls them, for the sickos. First of all, why would you want to call your family sickos? Because the majority of them prefer not to be called that.
All right. I just saw a fan earlier say that he would have given up on AEW if it wasn't for the matches. He said he doesn't really care about stories, he doesn't really care about characters, but man, these matches are so good, I can't leave AEW. I looked at that and said, bro, I don't know what, you must not have seen too many wrestling matches in your life. You know, like, these matches are not that good. You know, they're not that good. I have missed many a 5-star classic because I don't care about the people involved. I don't care to go out of my way and see what show it was on or anything of that, because it doesn't matter ultimately. You know, it has to somehow enrich my enjoyment of either the overall brand, any individual performer, or the business. Again, I've watched Lucha Libre, I've watched Japanese pro wrestling, I've seen guys take the stupidest, most retarded bumps possible and keep going. I've seen matches like that for years and years. So seeing that stuff in AEW does not really impress me. Not really. Watching a guy get tombstone power driven on a steel steps, it does nothing but tell me that it's fake. And that you don't take your craft seriously. And that you don't take the angle seriously. And that you're not serious about telling stories. I mean, it is what it is. You know, if that's for the sickos booking, then it's for the sickos. I'm not a sicko, man. You know? And I get what, I disagree with him saying that they prefer not to be called sickos. You know, I will refer to them as wrestling perverts. Because they love this blood all over the place and fire and thumbtacks and, you know, unknown wrestler versus unknown wrestler. They bleed all over each other for 20 minutes. They love that kind of shit. You know, I don't find the same kind of perverse enjoyment of it. I prefer if I actually know the people involved and have a sense of who they are and what they're fighting for and what they're looking to achieve. Because to me, that's what makes the stories better. Otherwise, you're just watching fake fights. And then you're watching these guys hit each other with, you know, fake light fixtures and, you know, a bunch of other stupid shit. You know, like, why go through all that? Make it mean something. I don't understand what's the problem with making it mean something.
Just a hint, Tony. Just a hint. But Tony's vision for that company, I guess, is to provide content for that percentage of the audience that only cares about high risk, high altitude, fast paced action, and not about story and not about characters.
Yes, I could have told you that. I could have told you that years ago, because that's what he was doing. And there's a market for people who are interested in fast paced, action based stories. You know, there's action movies for people who like action. There's drama for people who like dramas. And sometimes people want those two things mixed together. Sometimes people don't. But pro wrestling by nature is both. It's a drama. This is, everybody knows this. You know, it's all about talking people into the building and then getting them emotionally invested in the characters and the storyline so they'll come back. If you want to have a set piece and a fight scene over and over again, that might work for some people, but it's not going to work for everybody. And I compare it to movies all the time, you know, and this is where we get some of the sickos who are like, you would rather be a bad movie than good wrestling. It's like, good wrestling to you is good in-ring work. That's not what good wrestling is to me. Because most people can do the in-ring stuff. The vast majority of wrestlers, if given the same amount of time, can do the in-ring stuff. Everybody made fun of Cheeseburger. That guy's been around for over a decade. If you let Cheeseburger go in there and work for 25 minutes, he might be able to get over with whoever. If he'd got 25 minutes with Bobby Lashley, it might have been a much better match. But then wouldn't have made any fucking sense. And it wouldn't have told the story, and it wouldn't have got Bobby Lashley over. It probably would have got Cheeseburger over, but are you really keeping him on your roster? You really going to push him? You'll give him 25 minutes with everybody? So the idea is you have to realize that you are telling a story, and certain characters are important in that story, and making those characters look dangerous, cowardly, strong, weak, or whatever is part of that story. And then you tell that in the ring. If everybody is 50-50 all the time, then people are going to learn none of this stuff matters. None of it matters. Everybody's going to go 50-50 with everybody. So you have to make the decision that certain characters are worth pushing and worth using and other characters are not. AEW is starting to learn that, but they still like to have their 50-50 matches. Instead of just getting in there, getting the guy that they want over, getting him over, and then working an angle or whatever to make sure he looks good. And then that's that. They like to overprotect some guys, underprotect others, and just make all these really weird mistakes. Once you realize that everything that happens in pro wrestling is meant to further the angle, further the story, get heat or pops or whatever, and not for the promotion, but for the performer, then this thing makes a lot more sense to the average person. Because all you have to do is look at what works. Just copy what works to a degree. You know, and I think Booker T said this, most pro wrestling is just doing what you see other people doing it, just a little bit different. You know? A lot of people are like, oh, this Moxley thing is like the NWO. They compare everything to the NWO. Not every faction is the NWO or the Four Horsemen. I don't know what the faction is trying to do, like in terms of what it's trying to be. Because they're coming through the crowd. They have Wheeler Yuta in it, which is already like weird. Why is Wheeler Yuta one of the guys that's in your group? Now, it makes sense from a relationship perspective because, you know, Danielson. You know, so you have the Danielson connection. And you have the connection to Orange Cassidy to a degree. So they use them for that, which is fine. That's actually what you're supposed to do for the story, but he's not a badass. You know, he can't go in there and go 50-50 with people. If he was in there going full Dominic Mysterio, getting clotheslined and bumping like a goddamn maniac, he would be more over. He would matter more. If he was a little chicken shit who stabbed his mentors in the back, stabbed his friends in the back, and now they're kicking his ass every week, he would be more over. Because that's what happened with Dominic Mysterio, and it worked. But it's not working for Wheeler Yuta. Because they're trying to make Wheeler Yuta look like a badass. And it's not true. It didn't work for Jack Perry. Because he's not a badass. AEW has become the promotion where you dare people to kick you in the face. Come on. You know, everybody gives the middle finger before they pass out in a chokehold. Everybody can't play the same character. Everybody can't be a badass. You have to learn to differentiate. It's not going to work. You need to have the gift of discernment. And certain people need to play certain roles based on how they look. Some people need to get out of the way because of how they look or how they perform. How you choose talent, what talent you push, the storylines, all of it needs to be rebooted. The idea that there's no hope, however, is false. There's plenty of hope to be had for AEW. They have to open up, though. They can't wrap themselves in a cocoon and say, you dissed us, therefore we're not going to listen to you anymore. You have to say, okay, what are you saying? And can we incorporate that? Because if you're just going to cocoon and say, to be AEW is to be under constant attack, then it's going to be a problem. You have this inferiority complex, and yeah, people are going to encircle and kick you while you're down. But if you show that you're trying, most people will say, all right, they're doing something different here. They're trying something different. And then they'll accept it to a degree. But stop telling us that every show is great, every match is great, and you don't understand what the problem is. Because then that just means you're delusional. And you don't have eyes. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.